It's Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, a copyrighted edition with our video channel, and we're with our executive producer Hawk, and she's being a pretty good girl tonight, and she wanted to sit in and watch the production. Shake. Yeah, it's a good girl. Yeah, and she likes her face scratched. Yeah, it's a good girl. Yeah. Yeah? Oh, that's a good girl. Yeah. So, we're back here. This is a missing persons video, as all of you know. And this is the first day. That's Huck hitting the... No. This is the first complete day that the movie Missing 411, the UFO Connection, has been released, and the feedback is in. Wow. I appreciate all the comments. You're greatly appreciated, and you guys know what an effort it was to put this together, and I can tell from the overall response that I think everyone's probably watching it for a second time today. And again, you can get it from our website, and we're going to be back online tomorrow to purchase it. We can get it, the DVD to you quickly. And then if you want to purchase the online version, you can do that right now at Vimeo, at Amazon, and at Apple. And I think it's probably at other locations too, but anyhow, away we go with the missing person segment of the show. And the first thing we're going to talk about right now is some of the letters and emails that I've had just recently. This first one. Hey Dave, I'm from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Sioux Falls is a great and beautiful city. I'm really excited about Missing 411, the UFO Connection. I just know it's going to be great. Well, you probably have seen it by now. I really appreciate and follow your YouTubes. Before living in Sioux Falls, I lived in Fargo, North Dakota for many years. Went to college at Concordia in Moorhead, Minnesota, and I have a BA degree in English writing. Years ago, I lived in North Idaho at Sandpoint. Beautiful place, gorgeous as you know. Gorgeous place. I'd like to hang out there for a week in the summer someday. My partner and his family moved to North Idaho back in April of 2001 from Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. My partner's brother had an experience with a UFO in a forested area outside of Coeur d'Alene. It was nighttime, and Christopher told me that there was a UFO that hovered for a while and then zipped off into the night. I've heard that many times before from campers. He described it as a very strange incident. He was camping with his girlfriend at the time of the UFO. I recently purchased your book, Missing 411 Idaho. The stories that have happened in Idaho are strange and sad. It's sad that these people go missing, never found, and are sometimes found dead. However, I appreciate your efforts in investigating these cases. I can say that living in Idaho was great, but there was a strange undercurrent in the state. It always felt like a place that people love to live, a bit more secluded. It's a lifestyle place, and I can appreciate that. It was fun living there, and now reading your book about the 411 cases of the state, it's illuminating to me. I love nature, but I've learned so much from your YouTube videos. Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you for taking the time to read the letter. Sorry about the loss of your son, Ben. I lost Dad in 2014. I sure miss my dad. Dave, you have a gift of sharing important information, and I appreciate your efforts and for being a real person and a real investigator. Thank you. Well, no. Thank you for being here and writing a nice letter. You know what Huck's doing is, she knows. Huck is so smart. She knows while I'm reading and I'm looking over here, she can go over here and kind of walk around the library and sniff around and grab things and, hey, and just get into trouble. You know, I read to you in my news segment the other day about a Great Pyrenees that killed 8 coyotes that were attacking a sheep herd in Georgia. I read some more about the dog today, and that it was recovering well. It had some major gashes in its abdominal area and along the legs. And I got to say, it's probably a miracle the dog lived. And to say the least, I know that they're fearsome when they're family, and the sheep are the family, when the family is threatened. So I've said it before that sometimes in the middle of the night, I have to get up for whatever reason, and Huck will get up, and I can tell she wants to go outside. Well, we live in a forested area of Montana, and in the summertime, you go outside in the middle of the night, it's a little edgy sometimes. And a couple of times I've taken my big gun out there with me because Huck has acted very odd. And I'm not going to take a chance. I don't want her to get hurt, and I don't want to get hurt. But luckily, the only thing we've seen outside in the middle of the night and early in the morning, two things: lots of deer and lots of turkeys. So both of them are real friendly. That's Huck again, being so rude to the audience, knocking my tripod off kilter. But there we go, we're back again. Okay, so on to the next letter. Hey Dave, I'm a fairly young man and was completely into the Krishna religion in my late teens. I read the Bhagavad Gita 4 times at that time, and it has shaped much of my life. So I identify a lot with Ben. But thankfully, I never suffered from bipolar and similar debilitating mental illness. Thank God you did not. I see you as an uncle type, Dave, and I appreciate you showing Montana in your videos. This has inspired me in life. I can assure you that no fault of your own in Ben's passing, and I pray his soul is at peace and that you'll meet him again soon. I hope so. I really like the picture you showed of him recently on a YouTube video. His good soul shines through, even in that picture. You know, right next to where I'm sitting right now, a friend of mine did this drawing, and I've showed it a few times, but it's awesome. It sits right here next to me while I'm filming. And Ben's always with me. I know it. And there were times during the premiere I felt his presence. It's always good. And it's always warm. And that's what I like. My story. In my late teens, I became acutely aware of the UFO phenomenon. I had to factor that into my religion that I felt it was a spiritual connection to the topic. I believe that based on this mental and spiritual awareness, I then began to see UFOs. I'll share 2 of my most notable sightings. One, I had a giant pitch black triangle craft with bright red lights on each corner floating directly above my car in a coast-side suburban town in Cape Town, South Africa. I was parked outside of a friend's house. I gotta pay attention to some of these texts. Most of them I don't, but that one I needed to acknowledge. Sorry. I was parked outside of a friend's house when he got ready for a planned Friday night out. I was looking at my cell phone and noticed something above. I looked up and the craft was directly above me. It was huge and close above. I'd say helicopter flight level. It was moving as if floating seemingly slowly, and it floated toward the next town on what I now calculate must have been around 150, 200 miles per hour. My friend eventually came out and saw it, but it was already at distance. I had no fear whatsoever. It made no noise at all. Thinking back on it, the craft seems quite eerie. What's weird about it, my other sighting, is that it was in a very populated neighborhood. On a Friday night about 9 o'clock, when loads of people would be out, going to bars, but they didn't seem to notice anything. I guess that translates into a kind of selective cloaking where the craft's operators can be in a highly populated area and be completely invisible, while at the same time being fully visible to only a single or a few observers, perhaps with the purpose of wanting to reveal themselves to that specific observer for some reason. And you've hit on something there that I think is true. Selective cloaking. Whether it's true or not, maybe it's based on the angle. Maybe they're not cloaking per se, but they're allowing only a specific angle of the craft to be seen, and maybe it's because they wanted you to see it. I don't know. I guess that translates into selective cloaking, perhaps with the purpose of wanting to reveal themselves to what specific observer for some reason. Or it could be that the observer is somehow in the right state of mind or spiritual state or vibration, that the craft's cloaking is pierced by that observer as a result. At an earlier, more memorable sighting, where I received a telepathic message to say to go out and look up. Well, you should watch Missing 411, the UFO Connection, because some people in our movie were in the woods in the middle of nowhere and came out of the trailer and saw something very unusual. At the same time, I was projecting my thoughts of wanting to see a UFO, like sending the transmission out there. I was working out at a friend's house one night, and after our workout, I got a sudden, seemingly telepathic response to say, go outside and look up, come see us. I went and then saw an amazing sight, 2 brightly green, glowing metallic disc crafts flying in perfect sync next to each other high up in the sky, leaving a tail of green colored glow behind them. It was such a majestic thing to see, one of the most memorable and amazing things I've experienced. That would have been pretty cool, actually. That was Huck yawning and crying, Daddy, help me. She doesn't need any help. She's like, I think she's 13 months old now, and she's like a little puppy. She wants to be coddled and loved and played with, and Dad will do that a lot of times, but sometimes the audience takes precedent. Here, Huck. Back to the letter. I'm sure there is good in the world and in this universe, but it's clear from your research and other testimony that we got a relationship with some evil entities that we're not even aware of. Thanks for all you do, Dave. I never give up, and I wish you and your loved ones peace and happiness for the rest of your time in this world, and hope I'll meet you out there one day. I hope I meet you too. For followers, you know that I've been to South Africa, and I was working for a technology company in British Columbia at the time, and they sent me there for a conference where mining ministers from all the South African countries were having a conference there, and I went there with a consultant. And the consultant was a former De Beers Diamond rep. And he introduced me to tons of ministers from all over the world that were into the mining of diamonds. And most of these ministers were 70s, 80s, some 90s, but they all had sons that spoke better English than I. And most were educated Ivy League schools, super smart men. I never met a woman. And it was interesting. Wasn't what I expected, but it worked out for the best. And while I was in Cape Town, we got briefed many times about how dangerous it was around there, and how we were told never go anywhere outside the conference grounds without an armed escort. And they had armed military and private security there. It scared the crap out of me. I didn't realize it was that dangerous. So anyhow, next letter. Hey Dave, love your channel, documentaries, and all the work that you do. You're a pillar to the vast amount of truth speakers and people needing answers for unfortunate events that have taken place. Thank you for your hard work. Unlike many, you are actually doing something about it. Even if we can't get to the bottom of it in our lifetime, it's still brought to light. I have a few stories that I'll be as brief as possible. My oldest brother saw that very black triangle craft back in 1995. I was 15, and I remember him coming home one evening telling me his friend and their 2 girlfriends were hanging out on the beach really late at the north end of Virginia Beach, right at the edge of a Fort Story. He said this huge black triangle came down out of nowhere, made no sound, and had lights on all corners and a light in the center. It had darted around over the water, and then it moved from point A to point B at one speed. It was very close to the shore, and his buddy was walking toward it, basically mesmerized. He said out of fear for everyone, they quickly got the heck out of there, and they were in their car leaving a ton of military trucks come rushing down the road from Fort Story. Fast forward to 2016. My wife and I nearly my entire family are in my backyard around 10 p.m. hanging around our fire pit, enjoying the sky and a few drinks. As we were looking up in the stars, and what I believe was Mars, a very bright red light just flared up seemingly out of nowhere, then came straight down and made 2 or 3 right-angled movements on its descent. It came so low it had to have been maybe between 1,500 and 2,000 feet. Dave, this thing was huge and silent. It was like a huge red fiery orb, only it didn't look like flames but plasma. It had motion in it like an energy or something. Well, after it came down, it went towards the west in a straight line and very slowly. Everyone was freaking out. I ran in the house to grab a camera, but the only thing that was charged was my iPhone 5, and when I got back out, it was gone. Huck. No. No. Then, to my amazement, 10 minutes later, the damn thing came back. Same speed, same altitude, just the opposite direction. No justice as to what we saw with our eyes, and color was more orange in it. I still live in Virginia Beach, as a matter of fact, right next to Oceana Naval Air Station. I called the base and reported what I saw. I'll say that there is no way whatsoever that only we saw this thing. It's way too busy out there at night. No one else, including the base, could have noticed it. The orb practically flew over their airstrip. About 20 minutes later, my brother and I hopped in his truck and went up the road to see if we could spot it. While driving, we noticed the Navy had put 2 helicopters in the air patrolling the base. The guard gate we passed was beefed up with more security than usual. Dave, to this day, we still see weird stuff in the sky almost regularly. I'm not sure if you're familiar with geoengineering program. That's been going on for years now. But whatever these things are in the sky, they have taken notice. Thick crisscrossing streaks in the stratosphere sprayed out of the planes that expand out and turn into sky white. I've observed a lot of strange things here, and it's showing no signs of slowing down. Early summers this year, my wife and I were hiking a semi-secluded trail in First Landing National Park. Well, the black flies were in full force, and when they bite you, you don't stop until you smack them dead. Well, we were making our way as quickly as possible through the wooded portion of the trail to the area that runs along the side of the bay in hopes of less bug pressure. After about nearly 20 minutes of nonstop swatting at flies, we picked up from a first walk to a jog as to outrun the flies, which was absolutely horrible. Well, I'm much faster than my wife, and I was ahead of her a good bit and finally stopped to rest and was quickly ravaged by flies again. And in the midst of flailing about, which was only a few seconds, I'd not even noticed my wife had ran past me. I looked up and down the trail for her, calling her name very loudly, and was dumbstruck as to where she could be. I nearly panicked. I literally could not believe she had just vanished. Finally, I heard her voice, and I found her up the trail, which was really very far. The entire event was just 10 minutes of panic. I just couldn't believe I didn't notice her run past me. I'd almost turned back the opposite direction. I can totally see how people can lose each other out there. She couldn't even hear me screaming her name, and she was not very far around a bend. After that, we had a long laugh about it. It was pretty comical, but scary at the same time. I just thought I'd share these things with you. Keep up the most awesome work. I'm looking forward to the new movie, and we'll be sharing it with many. God bless. The new movie, Missing 411, the UFO Connection. And there are the locations you can get it. Now, our site, our Bigfoot store, is back up today or tomorrow. But you can get the online version right now. You could stop the motion of this, just stop the video and write this down, and then you can go on and log in. I'll try to put it on the pinned copy as well. Underneath the first comment of this video is the pinned copy. So, next letter. Hey, Mr. Paulides, I've been very interested in your work since I discovered your first film. That would be called Missing 411, and you can watch it on YouTube. Go to YouTube, put in Missing 411, my movie will come up. It's a YouTube version. I think the second film, Missing 411, The Hunted, was even more engrossing. I purchased my copy of your third film just the other day. Can't wait to watch it. I'm new to your YouTube channel and have subscribed. I've been watching a lot of the videos and working my back and time through them. I just viewed the segment titled Missing 411. David Paulides presents missing cases from Washington and one from Alberta. It was posted on July 6th of this year. In it, you stated something that really caught my attention. Well, that's helpful. I'm glad I did. While speaking about Ed Gross's case and showing the map of the area, you stated that there were a lot of weird things going on around Mount St. Helens back then, but that not much since the eruption has occurred. What exactly does that mean? It means exactly what I said. There's a lot of unusual things happening around Mount St. Helens prior to the eruption. After that, it slowed down. That could have been because there was a place called Spirit Lake right at the base of Mount St. Helens. It was a absolutely pristinely gorgeous place, and it got wiped out. I don't know. I just state the truth. I may be mistaken, but to me the implication was that previous to the eruption there were many cases of high strangeness in and around the mountain. Since the eruption there's been a marked decrease in high strangeness. If so, this could be a clue. Or a lot of the incidents with high strangeness are around water, and now that lake isn't there anymore. At a quick glance, there seems to be a direct correlation of missing people clusters and hotspots on your maps with areas of geological activity such as volcanoes and fault lines. On the West Coast, yes. On the rest of the United States, no. I find it interesting that you state Yosemite National Park is having the largest cluster of missing people in North America. Well, isn't it also the most active geological area as well? I mean, it's basically a huge caldera. That would be Yellowstone, not Yosemite. And Yellowstone does not have that many missing people, but it has some really strange cases. You just got the Yosemite and Yellowstone mixed up there. So back to my question or possible clue. Do you have any data that can show the number of reports involving missing people or high strangeness prior to the Mount St. Helens eruption, and then a decrease in similar data points post-eruption? Well, I don't have essentially any cases since it erupted, and all of the cases that I've written about pre-eruption are in the books. If this could be proved out, then maybe we could see a possible correlation involving an area that has giant... No, I don't believe there is. I don't think you can do that. Because again, it's only on the western part of the U.S. And you look at the rest of the North America, lots of missing people, lots of clusters, but no geologic activity. I'm not sure this idea can be applied across the board ever since our location is different, but it would be interesting. Thank you. Love your past work and look forward to your future endeavors. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you writing nice letters, writing letters that I can read, and using proper punctuation is greatly appreciated. Now, mental health. Talk about it every once in a while. It seems as though Canada is getting very liberal with their willingness to take a life over mental health issues, and that's very, very disconcerting to me. I've talked about it in past shows. It's starting to get some traction about how grossly inhuman the attitude is. Even the thought of taking a minor's life if they want to kill themselves. I can't even begin to understand it. But probably my question going back to you is, do you feel that the world's view of human life is being cheapened? I don't know. Usually whatever happens in Canada or whatever happens to the U.S. migrates to the other country. I hope that we don't start getting those opinions about human life here. So that's mental health. Talk about some missing persons cases. The first case involves a man named Peter Crowley, 35 years old, missing July 10th, 1992, in Baranof, Island, Alaska. Branoff Island is right near Sitka. And he lived in Devon, England. He was a teacher. And he had traveled the world and had actually taught in Kenya for a while. He was a very seasoned traveler. And he had planned a trip from the UK, where he was living, to Canada and then on to Alaska. And Peter was known as somebody who loved the adventure but wouldn't take risks, which is an important point. He was very close with his mom and dad and continually sent them letters and postcards from wherever he was going, which is another important point. Well, he left London on May 12th and he flew to Vancouver, and that's where his journey started. On May 29th, he bought a 1981 Ford station wagon in Alaska. And he teamed up with two German tourists and drove from Haines to Fairbanks, got on a ferry. Went from Fairbanks to Haines, got on a ferry, and then went to Skagway. And he left the car in Skagway on July 5th. Well, late in July 1992, Peter's dad contacted the Alaska State Troopers because he hadn't heard from his son. And he made an attempt to file a missing persons report. The troopers agreed to help him, and they would try to follow the credit card purchases he made. Well, the troopers found a witness that gave Peter a ride to Vestovia Mountain trailhead, and that was on July 10th. Well, Peter told the driver he wanted to summit Vestovia in one day and get back. Well, this was now August of 92, and troopers had an idea where Peter might be on Vestovia Mountain. And they called in search and rescue. They got more troopers. They got the Coast Guard. They got helos. And this mountain is right behind Sitka, Alaska. Not very far from a population zone at all. So 9 volunteer searchers, 3 canines showed up for the first day, and they searched nonstop for 6 hours. Then rain and wind hampered their searches. The second day, 6 volunteers showed up, and a canine unit were flown to the top of Vestovia, and they decided to search down from the top. Found nothing again. The third day, they had 9 volunteers, and a helicopter was searching. Well, and subsequent to that, the U.S. Coast Guard flew multiple search and rescue over the search zone with FLIR, hoping to find something. They didn't find anything. That was greatly depressing, as the troopers were keeping in touch with Peter's dad, who at this point had arrived and was helping with the searchers. Well, on August 21st, the searchers had made a determination that they were going to terminate the search for Peter because they weren't coming up with anything, and they thought that they had no other places to search. They had covered Vestovia very thoroughly. Vestovia was 2,549 feet in elevation. It wasn't that big of a mountain. It took 3 hours to climb up and about 2 hours to get down. It wasn't a very difficult hike at all, and it was described by many as an easy path to follow, and it was a little difficult hiking at times, but it wasn't outside the realm of a normal hike. Well, a normal Alaska day is 14 hours during the summer, so a 6-hour hike round trip, if you even went slow coming down, wasn't out of the realm of possibility. So when Peter told the car driver that he was going to hike up and down in one day, not unreasonable. And during the summer, that mountain gets a lot of hikers. So nobody could really understand what happened to Peter. Now, I've written about these Alaska hikers before, very close to a population zone that just seemed to evaporate away. Now, in this instance, What really hurt the search effort was they were a month behind where he took off to hike. Huge mistake on the part of Peter. And again, when I point out these mistakes, it's not to make fun or to criticize the victims. It's to point out how we could do better as people. The best thing Peter could have done was to carry a personal locator beacon. Second best thing is, wherever he was staying, and it was never noted, that even tell the hotel owner, leave a short note and say, hey, could you tape this to your phone? And if I'm not back in the room by tomorrow morning, could you call the troopers? Something as similar as that. This was in 92. It's been 30 years. Peter Crowley's never been found. Very sad state. One of thousands of people in Alaska that have disappeared. Not a place that I would recommend hiking alone, for sure. They got bears and they got a lot of bad wildlife up there that can kill you. Next story. First of all, remember a few segments back, I told you about a Scottish flyer that took off from a small island in Scotland and disappeared. And then he was later found in an area that was previously searched, dead on the top of a knoll. And the plane was gone. Remember that one? Very near the ocean. Keep that in mind when I tell you this story. This woman's name was Gaia Hope, H-O-P-E, 19 years old. Went missing November 7th, 2017 in Swanage, UK, S-W-A-N-A-G-E. She was one of a pair of twins. She had a sister. And she was epileptic. And she had a especially bad case of epilepsy that could be moderately controlled with medication. Now, why do I tell you this? Because a lot of the missing people I write about have some type of serious condition that sometimes by looking at them you can't tell. People with epilepsy, you can't tell unless they're in the middle of a seizure. But Gaia had a severe case. Well, on November 7th, 2017, she drove from her family home in Langton, UK, and to a friend's home where she was staying in Swanage. At 2:55 p.m., she was caught on CCTV cameras getting ice cream from a place called St. Michael's Garage in Swanage. Sounds like a good, fun thing to do in the middle of the afternoon, something I've been known to do before. And then at 3:45, she was seen knocking on the front door of a location in Manor Gardens. And then between those two locations, some people saw her running on the road in front of her home. Nobody knew why she was running. She didn't look like she was in danger. And nobody knew why she was knocking on another home at 3:45 in Manor Gardens. But that was the last time she was seen. And here's your quiz for the day. What time has Dave, through his research, stated that more people disappear than at any other time of the day? Hear it? Huck? No? 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 Time is 4 o'clock. So saying she was last seen at 3:45? Well, that's pretty darn suspicious in my book. So on November 8th, the BBC started announcing that there was a person missing in Swanage. And the police were flying along the coast in helicopters with FLIR and checking the land and the beaches for a young woman. They weren't saying who. They also called in the Coast Guard, police dogs, and search and rescue volunteers were in the area. The town was in an uproar because they were looking for this young girl. And they weren't having any luck, and they were getting nervous because this little town had very little crime. Again, this was just 5 years ago. So on November 12th, comedian Russell Brand, everyone knows who he is, went and told the story of Gaia. And the world finally started to know about it. Now, Gaia was known as a very sweet, nice person. And it was completely out of character for her not to come back to her home that she was staying at with her friends. But after the Brand story hit, November 12th, there were hundreds of people who came to this town looking for and volunteering to search. And then, at one point, the police arrested a 71-year-old woman and a 19-year-old man for Gaia's murder. Well, that's a major twist, Dave. You don't usually talk about people being arrested for murder. Well, and not too long after that, those two were released. The police seemed that they wanted to make this into a murder case by hook or by crook. And then, not much time after that, a 49-year-old man was arrested for Gaia's murder. And guess what? He was later released. That's pretty weird, don't you think? Police are making a lot of arrests, charging a lot of people with a crime, and then letting them go. 10 days after she was last seen, a group of hikers were out hiking along the trail near the cliff north of the city. And this is a normal hiking trail where people would always go out, and there was the ocean on one side and there were farm fields on the other. And as these people are hiking, they run across some scattered women's clothes. They think, that's weird. And they know about Gaia's disappearance too, so they call the police. Police come out, they determine that that's Gaia's clothes. But what's pretty bizarre is that area had been searched 20, 30 times, multiple times during each day. Helicopters had flown over each area multiple times, and never had there been clothes in that area. Never. So that was highly suspicious. So the police come in and they handle the area like a crime scene. And they're in the area not too long, and between where the clothes are found and the ocean, and between the trail and the ocean, in the grass, they find Gaia's body. And they're stunned. The area, again, had been flown over so many times that it was just a bizarre thing to find. Huck, be a good girl. Be a good girl. No. I'm trying to tell a good story here. No. 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 She gets rambunctious. She needs to get taught some manners. No. I'm sorry. I've got a young kid that's just getting rambunctious. So, the first day that the police are on the scene, they find the body. And right away, the police make a statement that there's no injuries to the body. Okay. And they admit that it's in an area that had been searched. And they refuse to say what she was wearing or what she wasn't wearing. Well, they also determined that there was no sexual assault. There was no injuries. And on November 20th, there was an autopsy, and they released that they couldn't determine the cause of death. Well, if you're a follower of my work, you know that's pretty common. The location was 3/4 of a mile north of Swanage, on the ocean side of the fields and the trail. 4 different days canines walked this area. 2 different days, heat-seeking FLIR helos had searched that area. Hundreds of ground searchers and normal hikers had walked through this area. And the body is found on a trail adjacent to the English Channel. Pretty darn odd. Now, what really bothered me is that the coroner refused to tell how long Gaia had been deceased. And why is that important? I'd also like to know what was in her stomach. Remember, the last day she was found, she was eating ice cream. Now, if they did an autopsy and they found ice cream in her stomach, they knew that she would have died in very close proximity to the last time she was seen. Now, if her stomach was empty or had something else in it, then she died a long time afterwards. Now, she had a congenital condition, epileptic. It was described as a very harsh case. An ocean was next to the body. Canines found no scent. She was missing clothing. Two months after she was deceased, and 2 months after the coroner stated they couldn't determine the cause of death, guess what they said? She died of hypothermia. Huck, stop it. No. 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 So, hypothermia. She was within 3/4 of a mile of town. She had no injuries to her body. So, how could she die of hypothermia unless she was incapacitated and laid there in the cold, let's say naked? Now, they refused to say all this, but I'm going to say it anyhow. No. You're starting to annoy me. You're starting to embarrass me in front of my friends. Well, what about GHB? They never tested for that. Why lay in the grass and die when you could walk back to the city? And everybody knows that as you get cold, your mind tells you, okay, get back to town where your house is. There was no logical reason for Gaia to lay down and die. There was none. So how did she get there? How is it possible that none of the searchers ever found her? Remember, hikers found her. Searchers did not find her. So, it's very reminiscent of the Scottish pilot who disappeared. His plane disappeared, and then he's found in the middle of a Scottish knoll in a grassy area, just like Gaia. I would have loved to have read the autopsy report on Gaia, because I think that there is some major clues there that the UK does not want to get out. They never once made an insinuation that this was a murder case. They never once stated that there was a sexual assault, there were defensive injuries. Nope. But I'd also like to know, was she wearing shoes? And if she wasn't wearing shoes, what was the condition of her feet? Because if she had hiked that distance, then maybe she had some injuries to the bottom of her feet. See all the questions that need to be answered? Well, they know the answer. They're not saying. But friends, these are the kind of cases that keep me up at night. You know, when Gaia was seen running around town, why was she running? Did she sense something? Did she see something? And you know, like I read the letter earlier when the person said, yeah, I'm cloaking and maybe sometimes people can see what's being cloaked and some people can't. Did this happen here? Did something scare her? Did she sense that something maybe wanted to take her? I don't know. I will tell you this, though, that there's way too many of these type of cases. And it would be greatly beneficial if coroners around the world, and I know that there's a lot that watch this show, would start testing for GHB as a normal part of the drug and alcohol screening. I hope that Gaia's parents had some relief in knowing that they found her. And I hope that Peter's parents in the UK don't live a life of grief and wondering where Peter's at. Thank you for being here. This segment is a little shorter than normal because we are absolutely overwhelmed at this point with multiple things going on at the same time. Namely, I've been asked to do dozens of shows about the movie. That takes a lot of time. And then we have a lot of orders coming in for DVDs and Blu Rays. So I've been helping them the best I can because they've asked, our group has asked for help. And I'm doing the best I can to manage all the different resources we have, our limited resources we have. So I appreciate you being patient. I'm trying to keep up with the videos. In the meantime, do something nice for somebody out there. Paulides out.